personal,
Mm-hmm.
they're not always who you dreamed them up to be. So
Very true.
the podcast, brings a lot of people in from different professional backgrounds. One guest I had, and this podcast is relatively new, I had Craig Hodges on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like really impressed with like how deep he was. Like, yeah, he was an athlete, he had a jump shot, but like he's doing a lot more in life beyond just shooting a basketball. So every guest I have on the show is somebody that intrigues me, somebody I know that can benefit the youth. And I really respect your grind, respect your hustle, and appreciate what you bring to the table, Coach Stout.
Yeah, nah, those are great words, man. I definitely appreciate that. I mean, to be in the same sentence with a Craig Hodges, that means a lot for me. So I appreciate you having me on here for sure.
No doubt, no doubt. So,
Mm-hmm.
Marcus, with me having a coaching background, I'm about to delve deep. I'm gonna take you back all the way to junior high, and then you're gonna share with our young student athletes. So, take us back to junior high before you got the Renaissance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so junior high, I grew up in Southfield, Michigan,
Okay.
and I went to a Catholic school called St. Michael's back then, and
Okay.
pretty much had to go to a Catholic school because I started hanging with the wrong crowd a little bit in elementary school. So my dad was like, "Nah, bro, we ain't doing that. Like, we're gonna send you to Catholic school." So that's why I ended up going to Catholic school, and went to Catholic school at St. Michael's, and then was playing with the Detroit Family Basketball Organization, and I played with them since I was 9 years old. So I was doing that, and then one day we had practice at Renaissance. I had to be in like 7th grade maybe, and that's when Coach Mark White came up to me, and that was the first time I met him, and he was just like, introduced himself to me and my dad, and just had a good conversation. And Renaissance was coming up at the time. That was Ricky Paulding's junior year, so they had, they were starting to get good and be known around the city, and yeah, that's kind of how it went. Like I said, I played with the family, and was just grinding, man. Like, I played all sports coming up: football, basketball, baseball,
Okay.
and kind of around the end of middle school, basketball kind of started to come to the forefront for me. That's something that I just was more intrigued by and loved the most, and just kind of ran with it. So.
Okay. Now, share with the young ball players of today the
Mm-hmm.
AAU climate back in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah,
far as the level of competition.
right. It was great, man. It seems like now there are a lot more teams, but I feel like back then the teams were a little more concentrated with talent and
Yeah,
players. So
it's
it was
diluted now.
yeah, it was tough to get on some of these teams. A lot of good players that I knew were constantly trying to get on the family. Like, for example, Maurice Ager that played at Michigan State. We grew up together playing in my front yard, and he was asking me all the time. This is before he was Maurice Ager. Like, man, can I come with the family? Can I come with the family?
Wow.
And like a talent such as Maurice Ager was having problems, getting on the family at the time. So it was tough, man. It was tough. A lot of good competition. The state tournaments were really respected then. So it meant something, to play against. We had the Mustangs and Team Detroit, and we had the All-Stars, these teams that had a lot of other good players in the Metro Detroit area. So it just meant something to win your in-state tournament back then, which I felt brought a lot of pride out and really made for great battles, then and then going into high school also. So.
Yes. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I know at least in the early 2000s, AAU was a lot more developed, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
When I was coming up, like in the early 90s,
Mm-hmm.
there was a John Sally basketball camp,
Okay.
and the championship game. My team had the best team by far throughout that whole camp, and we ran into a team. It was a one-man team. They had a kid named Willie Green.
Okay.
It was my first time ever seeing Willie Green. The final score was like in the 60s. We beat Willie Green, but I mean, we beat just Willie Green. Willie Green had like 40 out of the 50 or 60 points. We had 60-something points, close to 70 points as a team, but that's as close to AAU as it got. But by the 2000s, like AAU was like really, really organized. So
Mm-hmm.
take us back to 2004. That must have been a special year, undefeated season,
Mm-hmm.
a hell of a starting five. Break that down for the young viewers.
Yeah, that was a very interesting season. I've been with this pandemic and everything that's going on. There's been a lot of talk coming up about old basketball and things that happened. That was one of the things that's been coming up a lot was that team. So I was fortunate enough to be the starting point guard on that team. It was my senior year. We had Joe Crawford and Malik Harrison, who went to Oregon and Kentucky. Both were McDonald's All-Americans. We had Tawan Porter, who played at Oregon. We had
quick guard, little fella,
quick,
real
yep,
quick.
yep. We had Carson Butler and Andre Quizwell, who both played football at Michigan. The year before, we had another guy named Ronald Talley and Jason Hedden. They played football at Notre Dame and the Eastern Michigan. So we had a team full of athletes, man. We had a couple other guys, 3 or 4 guys in that class above us the year before that went Division I for basketball. So actually, the team the year before was overall more talented, with our class and their class combined. But just the gelling of the classes and like different things, it's almost too many people where that kind of it worked against us at times,
Makes sense.
So yeah. So like I said, going into that season, man, coming off AAU, I was playing with the family with Joe and Malik. Like it was a lot of hoopla. Like Slam magazine came in before the season and was taking pictures. We went to Slam preseason #1. Everybody's going crazy, and for me, it's something that I grew up. My dad went to Pershing. And
Eastsider.
Yeah, Eastside. Yep. And he's been taking me to Persian games since I've been 4, 5, 6. And those games, I never forget just the feeling I had and going to Cobo and cheering for Persian, for Willie Mitchell and T.C. Lee and Arthur Johnson and Mouse and all them guys, man. Like, I was like, man, I always want to play on Cobo's floor, So just going into that season, my thought process never even thought I could be in something that was of that magnitude. Like you number one, everybody like watching you. It was kind of surreal for me, being in that situation, So that was kind of the build up for me. Just coming from a youngin', just tapping back into that. I want to touch on that a little bit more. I was just so intrigued by basketball, man. Just going into the basement, dribbling. My sophomore year, I wasn't getting a lot of time. So after the games, man, I used to be so wound up and mad. I would go lift weights and dribble for like 2 hours before I had school the next day, late game. Like I was just so consumed by it, at that time where, my work ethic was insane, and it developed my mental to the point too, where when my chance came, I just attacked it, So for that year, I was ready. I went to the season like, man, like I personally had no scholarship. I had 1 scholarship offer going into the season. So I was like, man, look, like I got to get it. And I turned down, and I'll let you, I'm going too long, but I'll turn down the 2 offers, the 1 offer that I had going into the season, I turned them down. So I had Oakland and Norfolk State, and they wanted me to commit early, and I felt I was a better player than that.
Going to weigh your options.
Yeah, man. For me, like, they was putting a lot of pressure on me to do it now. It's a hard thing when I only had 2 out of 4 years. So it's like, man, I might not have anything. I don't know. We had 30 coaches in our gym from everybody, you name it, besides Coach K, Roy Williams, Kelvin Sampson was at Oklahoma, Indiana, Mike Davis, like you name it, all the way down to Dayton and Toledo, and none of them offered me still, So I'm like, it was a little nerve-wracking to go through that, but I just bet on myself going into that year. So it was a lot at stake for me personally, going into that year too, So
for the young viewers and listeners, I heard you mention work ethic, and what I also got out of your story, besides the work ethic, is just the confidence in yourself and the perseverance, not giving up. Take us back to that PSL era. No disrespect to the PSL hoopers of today's generation, but having coached high school basketball in Colorado real recently, the PSL is not where it once was as far as the level of competition now. In that era, you playing point guard, I know the point guard position was real loaded. Who was one of the tougher point guards to go up against the PSL?
Oh man, I wouldn't even do it justice by naming one. So at the time, like some people that I even just watched and I went up against were Brandon Jenkins, went to Louisville, played at Southeastern. We had Deshaun Wood.
6'5", 6'6".
Yep. Deshaun Wood at Crockett, in our league.
Wright State played at Wright State.
We had Rico Harris at Denby. He's one of the top players in the country. It was a lot, man. If I had to name one person that I played against the most, that was probably the toughest, it would probably be Just thinking going through ref, like it would probably be Marcus Crenshaw's another one at McKenzie. But if I had to name the toughest person, it's between at point guard Deshaun and Rico in high school.
Is it because Deshaun was fundamentally sound? He was only about 5'11", 6 foot, but
the thing about Deshaun was he's constantly attacking. His energy and he's like Pac-Man when it comes to basketball. Like living in the paint. Somehow, some way, like he had them floaters, he's fast, he's quick, and his mental is just relentless to like attack. He just has an appetite for it. So he's somebody that you can never relax on. He not gonna be crossing you and doing all these moves, but mentally you got to be aware of him for 32 minutes because if you don't, he gonna be in the paint every single time, and before you know it, he gonna have 15 points at halftime, and he ain't even look like he ain't did nothing for real. So he was one of them dudes where you got to really know basketball and watch to appreciate his what he brought to the game.
So. You were mentioning McKenzie earlier. It kind of makes me sad some of the schools that closed down, over the years. I'm looking forward to a PSL series that I'm also planning to do. Is going to be a shout out to the whole PSL era as far as going back from the 90s to like the 2000s, like early 2000s. I'm looking forward to having older guys who like Edward Norvell, guys like that, but just especially guys from schools that no longer exist, just to share with the young generation that's coming up now.
Yeah.
Now, how did you end up choosing a school out in the Bronx on the East Coast for college ball?
Yeah, man. So growing up, my dream school was always Michigan, and I wasn't able to get recruited by them, so it really came down to. And then, like I said, people were kind of shocked by this, but I only had 2 offers after the season. I had Wright State and I had Fordham. And the way it happened was the year before, my teammate John Barber, who went to Youngstown State, the coach, his assistant coach that recruited him went to Fordham the following year. So he liked my game from just following John. He used to watch us play. And he went to Fordham, so he started to recruit me from Fordham, And from there, Coach Wittenberg kind of flew out to Detroit. And, I didn't get a initial offer. He came to open gym. He didn't offer me. He did a home visit, but it was like unofficial, kind of just, talking, getting to know, nothing serious. And then we had a game against Rogers that year, and which was our first big game of the year pretty much. They were a good program with Coach Steve Hall over there. He had built a good – Ricardo Billings, a lot of good players over there. And we had like 30 coaches there once again. And Rogers at Herman Gardens, this is a little box if you've never been there, wooden backboards, but it was like packed. Richard Hamilton was at the game. It was crazy. So I happened to have one of the best games of my high school career that day. And after the game, Fordham, Coach Wittenberg was like, man, like, I want you. So I'm like, all right. So I had that offer in my back pocket, like, all right, cool, and just throughout the season, nothing else pretty much was coming my way. I got Rice State and Fordham. So after the season, we won. I took a visit. I loved it. The program wasn't too strong, but we had a good class coming in, and I had an opportunity to play right away and also have a bigger role than I had in high school, which is something that I was really looking for because me personally, I just felt the work that I put in and the capabilities I had on the court, I sacrificed a lot for our team. And I felt very fortunate. Like I said, I only had 2 schools to choose from, which is, to me, I look back at it like it's still kind of crazy to me, but that's kind of how that happened. And it wasn't like people were so much in love with my game or I was so good. I thought I was doing well. Like I had against Drew Knight, so I had one of our last 2 games, I had 14, 7 to 6, and you don't hear nothing about it. Like I was like, hey, man, I played well, and you Malik and Joe. So at that time, it was messing with my mental. I got no schools, feel like I'm playing well, I'm working hard, doing all this. So like, Fordham came out, and it was the best situation for him. It's like God really sent it my way. It was like tailor made for me. And
hey, A10 conference is no joke.
Yep. No, and that's what I'm saying. That was the year before Jameer and Delonte were at St. Joe's, and they had that run too. So I was familiar with them. So it was just like, it was just right. Some things in life just happen and it's right. That's how I felt. So
now, Flash forward to now, you're in the Fordham Rams Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of emotions was going through you once you got the word that you was going to the Hall of Fame?
Man, it was a very interesting moment because I was actually getting done with a workout and I was going through a tough time personally at the time. I only ended up playing 2 years pro and I was kind of transitioning out of dealing with some injuries and figured out what I wanted to do next. So the call kind of came at a good time for me personally, where, it was just thinking back upon going from the family to Renaissance to having a few offers to, just the late nights in the gym. To where I was at that time. It was just, for me, it was like, I felt validated. That's how I felt. I felt validated, because throughout my career, and I've learned that you have to validate yourself. You have to learn how to really validate yourself. And I was constantly always looking outward. When you're playing ball, you want to be in this ranking. You want this coach to like your game. Then you start playing well, then the girls like you, so that validates you. Like, all these outside factors are validating you. And what that situation taught me was like, man, like my work was validated for me. Even though somebody else voted it in or whatever, it's like, man, I know I put the work in because I love the game, because I want to be my best. And I was satisfied that moment with everything I had did at Fordham to be like, man, I did everything I could, and I felt good about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, when you played overseas, did you play out was it in the UK?
Yep, so I played in Austria and my first year, and the second year I played in the UK.
Okay. Now, for the young listeners, young athletes, that's one of the beautiful things about this sport of basketball. You get to see the world, especially for the young guys that's growing up in the inner city. I grew up around a lot of guys that never stepped foot out of the west side of Detroit, literally never even stepped out to the east side of Detroit, if you're from the west side. So it was a little bit different for me because I was from a wealthy African family, had relatives in different parts of the world. The best pure shooter I ever saw was a black dude from the UK. His whole family, all 4 or 5 brothers, all hooped the Lawman family. I think one played for the London Towers a few years back, but a lot of young guys of color don't even know that there are some hoopers out there that look just like us and have a completely different accent. They're not African, they're not Jamaican, they're British or Scottish or whatever might have you. They're from all parts of the world. So basketball took you to someplace else outside of Michigan.
Right, yeah. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
Now, as far as your coaching, your player development, like you work with players on the high school level, college level?
So I work with all levels, from kids all the way to NBA players. I have some NBA clients also. So,
looking back, if you were to change anything, you can take it all the way back to high school. What would you have changed?
It's a good question. If I had to choose one thing I would change, is I would approach the game differently. And what I mean by that is I would have a lot more fun playing the game. I was the kind of person that really took what I did, and I still do take it very serious. I'm a perfectionist, just by my nature. So I'm like always mad a lot because you're never gonna be perfect. But for me, what I've learned now is, and just getting older, is like the more that you can separate from something, and that's not saying because when when you're trying to be great at anything, you have to consume yourself in it. But that can become unhealthy for you. It can be, and you become so consumed that it can cause you to kind of things to go awry a little bit. Whereas if you know how to pull away a little bit when it's time and still be consumed when you're in it, and enjoy it, and not just approach it so much as like stressful and work and I got to do this. I think I would have really, I played very well, but I think my performance probably would have been a lot better just because I would have been more engulfed in the moment and enjoying it more and not worried about what somebody's, getting to this level, doing this or doing that, just engulf myself in the moment. So that's one thing I would change. about it. Just like I said, just having fun. And I try to tell kids, now, man, you got to enjoy this thing because it's over before you know it, you know. So,
Facts. Facts. Now, it could be a lot worse now. You've made it in life. You're productive. You're doing some things you enjoy doing. I come from an era, mid to late 90s, where a lot of other student athletes like myself, but they weren't as fortunate outside of sports. After sports, they got caught up in criminal activities, or they end up getting killed, unfortunately. So we're here, we're alive, we live to see another day. We're motivated, we're inspiring the youth. So what is your 5-year outlook? If you could break it down in a couple sentences, what is your 5-year outlook for Marcus Stout?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And my 5-year outlook, I'll be 34 in a month, about a month from now. So my 5-year outlook, I'll be 39. Wow, that's crazy to think about. I'll pretty much be pushing 40. I remember when my dad turned 40, I was like, 40, man, that's crazy. But no, my 5-year outlook for me, like I'm in a great place right now. I'm able to do what I love every day. I live in New York. I love New York, living in New York City. So for me professionally, one thing that I am attaining to do now is to coach. And I want to, the one level that I haven't experienced yet fully is the NBA. I played overseas. I played some NBA Summer League in Las Vegas when I came out of school, but haven't had a full season just to see the in and outs of how the NBA really works. I've worked with a lot of the players that played there, but personally, that's a goal of mine, is to have an experience at the top level of the ins and outs of it. So in 5 years, that's something that I want to be in the place where I am doing player development, assistant coaching at the top level in the NBA. And, and then after that, for me, depending on how that goes, whether it's college or high school or staying in the NBA, I just want to be around basketball, whether it's what I'm doing now, individual development by myself. I want to do that. But in 5 years, I want to have the experience of being at the top level of basketball. I do want to have that.
Now, Coach Stout, I look forward, if you get another chance in the next couple months. I want to have previous guest Coach Cyprian back on this podcast. I want him to have him on the podcast with you. He was a executive member of the Memphis Grizzlies a few years back. He was an assistant at Texas Tech last season. And he's also been an assistant coach with a Nigerian Olympic men's basketball team. And,
wow.
I'm looking forward, having him on the show again. I really hope to have you on the same episode with him. Just kind of, bouncing off ideas, and both of you. Obviously, networking is always great for anybody, for you, for me, no matter the level that you're on. You obviously have more of an inside track to pro coaches. Me, I'm focused more on the podcast tips. So just linking up great minds, building together, man. I always look forward to opportunities like that. Always. Also have a college basketball expo with some of the young ball players from my native homeland, Ghana, coming up. So I'm going to put out the flyer out there. I hope to have you on that podcast as well. Ghana is home to a lot of freakish athletes. Like, some of the best athletes in the world is actually from my homeland in Ghana. Most of us end up being boxers or soccer players. The soccer is the most popular sport in the world, but now basketball is like the new wave over there. So a lot of our top athletes I see back home, they're starting to get on the basketball tip. So I hope to have you on that episode as well. Tell us about this dialect podcast.
Yeah, so just to bounce off that real quick, with a couple of my good friends from Fordham, we have a lot of international students, and one of my teammates was from Ghana.
Oh, really?
And one of my best friends that I'm super close with now is from Ghana. He played on the soccer team, so he's back and forth, and he's calling me when he's over there and FaceTiming me and like showing me playing soccer, how great the life is over there, which is like you hear the opposite. So like, with them starting the NBA Africa, that was, coming around. Like I would love to having friends personally from there. you know, I have a lot of knowledge and respect for, you know, just and wanting to get over there just for that. And one of my favorite professors from Ghana too. But you know,
Oh,
so I
really?
have a
Oh,
connection with Ghana. So yeah, yeah. But yeah. So but the Dialect podcast. So yeah, it's kind of crazy how this kind of came up with everything going on. We were all at home, and you know, everybody was getting on Instagram Live for a minute. Like, you know, everybody was doing this. So I was having people, friends and different people, man, you want to go live? And I'm more of a quiet person. I don't do Instagram Live. I don't talk basketball with a lot of people or be online, you know.
that's a surprise to me because last night, you know, you had him going with with the next top 10 after the top 50 and the Dominique Wilkins Vince Carter argument having
Yeah,
it going.
yeah. So I've just been having fun with it. But, you know, basically, like I said, it came about my high school teammate, Joe Crawford. We had talked a couple months ago. He just mentioned wanting to do a podcast. So I was just like, all right, that's cool, man. Like, you know, I'd love to be a guest on it. And we got on live one day, to make a long story short, and it just went super well. We just had a chemistry on it, which we kind of had on the court too.
Great
So
chemistry. He's more of a talker. You're more laid back, but it's a great blend because if you got two talkers on the podcast, it's horrible.
Y'all just gonna talk right at it. And you know, the best part about it is I've learned so much about myself. Like, it's almost like watching film all over again as a basketball player, where you seeing how you're showing up, you know, your mannerisms. I was over talking him. He was over talking me at first, but you know, watching film and, you know, just seeing, like, it's been a great process personally. It's been a journey. Me and him have some deep talks just through going back into your story and, you know, digging into the not so good parts that you kind of hold up that have kind of came out, and just growing personally, which is, you know, I think as people, that's something that you don't value that until later in life, where, you know, your personal growth through things is just as important as the money you make or the success or the non-success you have. So for me personally, it's just been a great journey to tap into places that I wasn't comfortable doing. But now when I look at myself, now I'm just comfortable just being myself on that screen, and just it's turned into, you know, we have a great network of me working with a lot of players and knowing a lot of coaches and execs on all levels, and him playing in the NBA and doing his thing. We just want to kind of bring it all together and create a platform first for Detroit, because it's our experiences that we had. A lot of variables played a lot of factors into them that people wouldn't understand when you judging two players, why this player quote unquote made it and why this player quote unquote didn't. It's not just about he can shoot, dribble, and pass better, you know, or even like you said, make it in life. You know, what does that even mean? You know, like, yeah, you successful in life. That means it was good. So just bringing a vision. We call it the dialect. We want to bring a certain talk to the basketball world of things that are not really discussed outside of dribbling, pass, and who's better. Yeah, that's the fun talk. Yeah. But we're in this for the next generation, because we have some great players coming up in Michigan right now. And to get a hold of them, because the things that we experience, they're going to come their way.
Yep, the Imani Bates of the world, they can all benefit.
Jaden Akins, all these guys. And we just want to get to them early in a way of purity, in a way of, we don't want anything from you. You know, we're doing this to talk to you, to show us our past. We're doing our own thing. We don't need nothing, but we went where you went, and we didn't have anybody to come back and give us experience or a game or ask questions, anything. So we are creating a huge platform. We have a lot of things coming, but the dialect is just part of it to get the conversation started around what we feel really matters in the game.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Coach Marcus Stout, I appreciate you coming on, taking the time. It's not easy to get the guys like you get your ear. I appreciate you taking the time, man, to come on the Heavy Brand podcast. I hope you give us another opportunity at another time, man. I want to give you a salute as always, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Salute, man. Like I said, I appreciate you reaching out, being from the city. And like I said, I love Ghana, man. I'm looking forward to getting over there just for friends and just learning, you know, in this business world. And this is like basketball. It's I got a lot of respect for that, a lot of admiration for that. So I just want to tell you, like, keep going. You know, anything you need from me where I can help, let's do it together. Let's make it happen. Man. So I appreciate you reaching out for sure. Yep.
Thank you, Coach Marcus Stout. look forward to the recorded episode. It's going to be posted on Instagram at Heavy Brand Inc.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to posting and getting the word out.
Yes, sir. See you
All
soon.
right. Yes, sir. Take care.
So.